Hi guys, I'm Mike.
And I'm Ash.
And this is F1 Fanatics. So today guys, this is our race review. Obviously we cancelled our race reaction and our drivers ratings on Monday in light of the tragic accident that happened on Saturday that obviously shook the motorsport world, and that is obviously the sad loss of life of Anthoine Hubert. Yeah, we still went ahead with the race, but for us I don't think it kind of felt right to be putting out content during that sad time, and obviously very grateful that the Sunday race went through risk-free with all the drivers. Obviously, like we said, it was massively sad news. Our thoughts are with his family and friends at this difficult time. Nothing really we can say can do it justice, but in the description below I'm going to leave a link to the Paddock Pass post-race video on the F1 channel. I think you hear from the guys who knew him and they do a very good tribute to Anthoine, and yeah, they can say it better than anything that we can say, other than he was a very young promising driver that no doubt had a future in F1, and the world's been robbed of that, but more importantly the family have been robbed of their son.
We also want to put our thoughts out to Correa and his family and friends as well. He does have a lengthy rehabilitation program going to be put in place for him after having surgery on both of his legs. And obviously he's going to be going through a lot of physical and mental pain at this stage. So we wish him the best and hope that that recovery goes well for him, and it may be difficult, but it would be good to be able to see him in a car at some point racing in the future.
So guys, in light of that, obviously that was our thoughts. We thought we had to mention something in that weekend, and obviously the racing was something that would come second to those news, but we feel the best place to start this race review was with his friend and winning his first ever Grand Prix, and it was kind of seemed fitting that it was Charles who would do this. It was a great drive from Charles Leclerc, and amazing, he's deserved it that he's got that first Grand Prix win.
Yes, and I'll be perfectly honest, one thing that will stick with me from this race weekend is the picture of Matteo Binotto actually putting his arm around Charles Leclerc after the minute's silence that was held before the race. You could tell that it didn't seem as if Charles Leclerc was mentally ready for the race at that stage, which is more than understandable. Nowadays it's not really something you associate with motorsport. Since, I would say, the death of Ayrton Senna, the safety that has been put in place in Formula 1 and right through motorsport in general has definitely alleviated a lot of the risk that was associated. But when you're getting into a car after something like that, knowing that that risk is still there, it was a very mature drive from all of the grid, I would say, and it was definitely fitting that Charles Leclerc was able to stand on the top step of the podium for the first time in what would have been a highly emotional race weekend for him, as he was incredibly close to Anthoine Hubert.
And he pretty much had a flawless weekend. He topped 2 out of the 3 practice sessions, and then actually I think he topped 1 out of the practice sessions, with Vettel topping the other 2, but when it mattered he topped it in qualifying and he topped it in the race. And he's just proven, and something that he's proven throughout the season, that his 1 lap pace generally is better than Sebastian Vettel's. I believe that was his 6th time that he has consecutively beaten Vettel in qualifying, which is superb considering it is his first season in that Ferrari seat and the pressures that that Ferrari drive bring with him. In the race he was absolutely superb, kept the lead from the start, and he did not lose the lead at any point. He led every single lap of the 44-lap race at Spa, and it was just superb, really. But he was helped out a lot by his roadblock, Sebastian Vettel.
Yes, but you've also got to look at the fact that actually his race management was fantastic. So was able to maintain the tyre wear and the tyre life even for that first stint, getting to lap 22, and that did allow him to maintain that one-stop strategy, which, as was evident, Sebastian Vettel wasn't able to do. So it was a well-rounded drive from Charles Leclerc, which, yes, we had the excitement of Hamilton once again being able to close up to the leading car due to very good tyre management, but it was one where it wouldn't have been felt right had Leclerc lost it. Like in Bahrain, we all say about the fact that Leclerc was unlucky not to get his first race win, but this weekend, and just the manner of his drive and his performance across the race weekend, it just wouldn't have been right for him to have lost that lead, and it was well deserved. So well done, Charles Leclerc.
Yeah, and I think it's well done, Charles Leclerc, and I do think Vettel does deserve superb credit for it, in terms of, obviously he's had a tough year. It is now over a year since he's won his last Grand Prix. He could have let that frustration, but as soon as it came clear to him, probably as early as the restart from the safety car when he locked up twice going into La Source, he then made sure that he kept Hamilton behind him for as long as possible, and gave Leclerc that chance, those extra laps out in front, to build a lead that would then obviously become not catchable enough. It may have been 1 or 2 laps more and Hamilton may have overtaken him, but that kind of roadblock from Vettel was really good. But I think that probably leads us on nicely to, not a surprise because they have been so dominant this year, but I think we're surprised by the amount of race pace that Mercedes had, and actually was quicker than the Ferrari.
Definitely, and as you say, the main thing that led to Leclerc being able to maintain that race win was the fact that Sebastian Vettel was able to keep Lewis Hamilton behind him for those extra few laps, because I don't think any of us were expecting the Mercedes to be that much quicker than the Ferraris in terms of their race pace, because that Ferrari was quicker than the Mercedes over a single lap and then in the straights, but because of how the tyre wear was for them, they're still not able to maintain the tyre for a full stint, as we saw with the Mercedes. So that pace from the Mercs was a surprise in terms of comparing it to the Ferrari. I don't think anyone was expecting it.
Even when Vettel, I remember, I was also at the Arsenal-Tottenham game, and I was sitting in the stands of the Emirates watching the race live on Sky Go, and I was literally screaming at the phone. I was like, as soon as Vettel got past, I was like, they've got to pit him, and then he's got to come in. But as soon as he pit, admittedly he came out and he locked up pretty early, but he wasn't really able to eat into any of that gap with fresh soft tyres on. Obviously he got the fastest lap in the end, but I was expecting him to be able to close down and maybe even to have caught Valtteri Bottas, a bit like Hamilton did to Verstappen in Hungary, but there was no evidence and no chance that happened, which the Mercedes pace was a real big surprise, and they were looking to close that gap, and it looks like they might have closed that gap in the power unit. Obviously tyres come into play, but it certainly wasn't as huge a gap as we thought it might be.
No, and the one thing that wasn't surprising was Sector 2, Mercedes had that advantage. But when you're looking at it, and timing wise, there was a good 3 or 4 laps where in that sector Hamilton was taking 1 to 2 seconds out of Charles Leclerc. So I would say that the power unit in the Ferrari is still quite far ahead of the Mercedes, but it's closer than we were expecting, definitely, from before the summer break. But also, it's closer than pretty much everyone was expecting, because it doesn't matter who you've been you would listen to, it was that the Ferrari was going to be able to run away with Spa and Monza as the two races this season, and it wasn't as easy as Ferrari would have been expecting.
No, certainly wasn't. And then I think, talking about it, it's a second place. It's not a win for Hamilton, but for me, I mean, it was pretty much, we spoke about this after Max Verstappen not winning in Hungary, that Hamilton had sealed the title. But for this was the final nail in Max Verstappen's faint hopes coffin, with his exit in the Grand Prix out on turn 1, and I think that's probably a good place to start now. I've watched Chaz HD's video on the Instant Report. He does good videos on the Instant Reports from every Grand Prix, and I think our first instinct, we both kind of, obviously we weren't with each other, and I was like texting, I was going, that's Max's fault, and you're like, yeah. And I still feel that, but the way it viewed, and you get to see the aerial shots, there was a lot of room that Kimi could have allowed Verstappen, and its first corner of a race, he could have allowed in that room. They didn't both need to be as aggressive. Raikkonen as aggressive turning in, and Max as aggressive going for the gap as it. But I'm sure you'll mention the famous Ayrton Senna quote in your review of the incident.
Well, I wasn't going to, but I was actually going to say more the fact that I would say the incident is down to the fact that once again Verstappen hasn't got away off the line as he should have done. He was slow away, which meant he was needing to be more aggressive into the corner, because he was having to make up for positions he'd lost, but also the fact that he is wanting to challenge for that world title. So that start for the Red Bulls, it doesn't seem to be as easy as we've seen in the Mercedes or the Ferrari. So I would still lean towards Max being more at fault than Raikkonen. Yes, there was the space, but considering how well Max has been performing, the one thing he would know going into that corner, that gap was always going to close. It doesn't matter how far alongside Raikkonen he got, there was always...
At the end of the day, Raikkonen was ahead, and the car who is ahead, it is their corner, and he can see better. And they do have wing mirrors on the Formula 1 cars, but visibility in them can't be great. From there, I lean... There's half a dozen of one and 6 of the other.
Yeah, it's definitely a racing incident.
Yes, you like to see those guys kind of driving hard. They're risking, but it's, you're going into the race and you go, lads, especially... I classify Max as experienced on the grid now compared to him. There's 44 laps to go, and I view Max, he's 21 consecutive top 5 finishes. Going for that, it struck his frustration of the start, and he let that feeling get the better of him, rather than realising that on the straight at the top of Radillion, he could have got those... Well, either one position if it was just Kimi, or Sergio Perez's position as well. He could have got both of those positions, but he decided to risk it all on corner 1, and it's a long race.
Let's be honest, Spa isn't a track where you win the race in the first corner. You definitely can lose it, which was shown, but Spa isn't like a Monaco and a Hungary or anything like that.
No.
There are overtaking opportunities, so he didn't have to dive in like that. But then again, you can look at it from the perspective there was the space that Raikkonen could have left. Was he ever going to leave that space? No. And that's where I'm coming from, looking at it as being more.
Yes, but you also go, Kimi's almost 40, he's experienced, he's been involved in a lot of turn ones, he had a lot of space to his left, and he could have, I think in that video with Chaz HD, he was saying that you can go on the racing line wider, and he would have got a better exit from the corner anyway, because Max would have had a poor exit because of how deep he's had to go into the corner just to try and lunge and get ahead. So yeah, he would have got better traction out of that corner and would have had him on the straight at that point anyway. So it was almost unnecessary. You just needed to be, you expect him to be a little bit more aware for an experienced driver. But at the end of the day, it ruined both their drives. Max went out, crashed into the barrier after it because it steering rod was kind of completely screwed, and the tyre just kind of gave in as he tried to go up Eau Rouge and went straight into the barrier. And Raikkonen had damage to his floor that he got round, but he said it himself it was almost pointless them driving round after that, because all the performance in the car that Giovinazzi showed actually went. I think so. Obviously that's matched up and leads us probably quite nicely onto Alex Albon, who had an absolutely superb drive in the Red Bull, and I think, can we say we called it from our video in the Spa preview?
Well, I said podium, but that was on the basis that I thought it was going to be Max Verstappen that took engine penalties, not Alex Albon. So we called a good performance. So
yeah, I think we said success for him in the Spa in the Gasly versus Albon video, and we said success for him would be 8th or higher. And especially 8th or higher considering he took the penalty and started all the way back in 17th. Obviously benefited from the late retirements of Norris and Giovinazzi, but it was still, he had some superb overtakes. I mean, his overtake on Ricciardo.
Yeah, not many people can drive around the outside of Daniel Ricciardo and live to tell the tale.
And it was superb the way he cut in, got great traction out of the corner, and then got round him at just a part of the track you don't overtake on, and was superb. His move on Perez late into the race was bold and made sure that he was just hungry to get up as high as he could, and yeah, it was great.
The one thing I'd say is, yes, the first stint didn't light up the race. He didn't make as much progress as you'd expect, but a lot of the cars around him had started on the soft tyre, whereas he was on the medium, so that would have had an effect on it. However, he maintained his pace throughout the race and then grew in confidence, and you could see that based on the overtakes he was then going for. So brilliant race from him, and well deserved, and congratulations to him because he's actually gone into the seat and performed. So Christian Horner was straight onto the team radio congratulating him for it and saying how amazing the drive was. So we have to actually do it as well. It was a very good performance from him.
Yeah, absolutely superb to see him there. It was a big step up for him, and yeah, he looks natural, and I think we've both said it as well to each other. We're really excited to see what he can do in Singapore, because we're almost going to write off Monza, although they did have pace and the Honda power unit, obviously he was sporting the new one. It looked good from there. It'd be interesting to see where it is in Merc-Ferrari relation. But Singapore is definitely going to be a really interesting circuit to see how he does in the first track that will suit his Red Bull. I think now probably moving on to the other one in that video we talked about, which is Pierre Gasly. Obviously back in the Toro Rosso, and he did get a points finish.
He did, but it wasn't a perfect race from him.
No.
But it was a successful race. He's gone into the car and he didn't let the knock of being dropped from Red Bull affect his performance. The only thing I would say is he finished where in the same sort of pack really as where he was with the Red Bull. So it shows his ability, because the Toro Rosso hasn't consistently been a point scoring car this season. So it's an awkward one there, because would he have been able to get the result Albon got in the Red Bull? Probably not, but has still got a good performance in the Toro Rosso.
Well, he said that the Toro Rosso car does suit him more. Obviously, again, he benefited getting that points finish from the late retirements of Norris and Giovinazzi. I think it was solid, and I think considering the circumstances as well, obviously we talked about Charles Leclerc being friends with Hubert. Obviously Gasly was roommates with him and spent a lot of time, and he was a really good friend of Gasly. So yeah, getting in that car and putting in the performance that he did, putting that visor down and just getting the job done, took incredible mental strength from him, so that was absolutely superb. But he is involved in that three-way fight for the 2020 Red Bull seat, and Daniel Kvyat, the third driver we haven't talked about, had a superb drive, and I think it's kind of gone under the radar because of Albon's drive, Charles Leclerc's victory, and everything going on at the top end of the grid, and the retirements, and Max obviously crashing out. No one really spoke about Daniel Kvyat's drive, and he was, I think, 19th or 20th. He was 19th because Kubica started 20th in the pit and managed to get up to 7th. And he showed natural pace in a car in the Toro Rosso that didn't really show any pace all weekend.
No, and the one thing that shows from the whole weekend is that upgraded Honda engine. It's got some pace to it, so
it does.
They took the right strategy call to take the new spec engine this weekend, because it has set them up nicely. Daniel Kvyat, I would say, slightly edged both Gasly and Albon this weekend, just because the fact that the Toro Rosso in general hasn't really shown that pace, whereas we know that Red Bull has had it, especially with the increased downforce.
Well, he had the same penalty as Alex Albon, and he's basically matched him in a worse car.
Yeah, so I would say Kvyat has edged it out of those three this weekend, but I want to see where that car is without the penalties, and that goes for Red Bull and Toro Rosso.
And I think seeing how this Honda car develops, Honda power car develops, I think it makes it really exciting for 2020 to see it as a major player in the engine stakes again, which obviously it hasn't been for a long time in Formula 1. Where do we move on to? Probably a note to the racing points.
Yeah, double points finish. So
I predicted it. I said double points finish, and I said Checo would finish best of the rest, which he did.
Sort of.
Unfairly won, because it's cruel to take that one away from Lando Norris. But on a technical...
Well, I would say sort of more, because Albon would be classed as best of the rest for this weekend.
Okay, for this weekend where he started, but I've now taken him out of that bracket. So.
Okay, fine.
He's gone. He's in the top bracket. That's where he's got to compete with to get the seat for next year. So that's what you've got to judge him against.
Okay, but yeah, okay then. Fine. Sergio Perez best of the rest.
But yeah, I did say the racing points. They've done well. It's a track that they've done well historically at in the past. They did again. I'm gonna give credit to Lance Stroll. I thought it was a solid drive, but like we said, nothing ever comes good after a but. He was 25 seconds behind Sergio Perez. in a car that did well in the weekend and only getting a points finish because of 2 late retirements, I feel that's not a great drive.
I'm going to defend him a little bit.
Good.
Just a little bit.
Good. Save our face so we don't annoy people again.
Race-wise, he did well, and his racecraft was very... trying to think of the right word.
You can compliment him.
No, it's not what that I want to compliment him. It's more the fact...
We don't want to do something terrible like that.
His racecraft was tidy. I'll go with tidy because he's had scrappy...
He did some good overtakes within
and
the
he's
race.
had scrappy weekends. Once again, his problem was on a Saturday. So...
I don't disagree with you. I think he had one of his best Saturdays.
Oh, it was one of his best Saturdays.
Because he got out of Q2, and then obviously because he was starting from the back anyway, you saw it the same with Alex Albon. They weren't pushing for him to go in Q2. So I think he actually would have got into Q3.
See, I don't think he would have, though. That's the problem. I still don't think he was putting together strong laps. He was, on Sunday, he was able to perform on the basis that he could have a scrappy sector here and there, because on the whole, it was okay. His problem on a Saturday is still the fact it's hit and miss as to whether he can put together 3 sectors that show the pace of the car. Because even though he got into Q2, his time in Q1 compared to Perez wasn't spectacular. So, yes, I understand not running a competitive time in Q2 because of penalties, which Albon did, the majority of cars did, let's be honest, but he still didn't show that outright pace of the car that Sergio Perez did, which if he could tidy up his qualifying laps, a lot of the criticism that's coming towards him for not performing would...
It seems to be a mental pressure thing. With a lot of these drivers, what separates them from the great and the good drivers is under the pressure situation, and in terms of, because all weekend in all 3 practice sessions, I think he might have put times in the top 10, and so obviously you take them not from merit because teams are running different things,
different programs done at different times,
different tyres,
different fuel loads.
Yeah, but still he was showing natural pace in the car, but it's just when that comes down to it, for whatever reason he can't get into that mental state to do qualifying. But it was positive, and it was a first real sight of the Racing Point upgrades coming, and they're probably a team to watch next year because they've got huge investment from Lawrence Stroll, and they've always, like we said, they're a team that outperform the means that they've got.
Definitely.
I think now we'll probably look at McLaren's, is it?
Yes. Well,
yes.
Disappointing weekend to say the least, and what is it? Like, seriously, the clutch or the gearbox, whichever one it was, because they haven't actually come out and said what the issue was, but one, for Carlos Sainz's car to go, for anti-stall to kick in on the grid, which, that's what it's there for, brilliant, but for it then not to kick in the pit lane, and then, once again, for him to be coming through the bus stop chicane, losing it, and then the anti-stall kicking in, not kicking in even, and the clutch then not engaging, meaning that the car was then stuck there.
Happy birthday, Carlos.
Yeah, that car.
I mean, look, Carlos Sainz has been so consistent, and I think you've seen it in all of the midfield pack that there have been reliability issues. I would say only within the top 3 teams, and even within there's been issues within Ferrari, and there has been issues within Red Bull in terms of lag between the engine and the upgrades. I think Max has suffered with that quite a few times.
Max's turbo lag has been quite bad.
Yeah, prevalent throughout. I think only you can say Mercedes have pretty much been...
And Williams.
Yeah, of course, the ever reliable Williams. Again, remember, the only team still on the grid to have both drivers
finish every race.
So you know it's there. But so can Norris can definitely be angry, but Carlos, he's had a good stint. Will he be back in Monza? I think the real big surprise for me is those things are out of their control.
Yeah, there's nothing that Carlos Sainz could have done about that, and it was unfortunate because he definitely would have been making the sort of progress that Alexander Albon did, especially when you see the performance of the car in the hands of Lando Norris.
Well, yeah, you saw Lando Norris, and I could be right, I'm pretty sure it was around about 17 to 18 second gap between 5th and 6th. I remember tweeting out, God, this might have been a curse. I tweeted out going, Lando's in a race of his own here.
Well, he was.
I think he was I think I'd mentioned something about replicating Carlos Sainz's race in Hungary, which he was just ghost mode.
One thing that I want to put out there is Lando Norris did what Max Verstappen should have done at corner 1.
Yeah, he just avoided it, didn't he?
He knew that something in front of him was going to happen, so just dropped back that little bit and then just drove through nice and smoothly up into 5th.
He was the big winner, got 5th, and then stayed there for the other 43 laps until his engine decided till his car decided to pack in
and go into anti-stall.
And
which do you know what? That was an awful team radio to hear.
I was heartbreaking. That is the most emotional I've heard Lando Norris. And then you see his post-press conference. He's a broken man.
I've never heard Lando Norris swear. He always seems like the cheery, happy guy.
He doesn't seem like the type of guy who knows what's like. If someone sweared in front of him, like, "Oh, that's a bad word. Don't say that."
Yeah, and then to get that over the team radio, and it would have matched McLaren's best performance this season, wouldn't it?
And it would have been his best performance ever. And for it to be taken away from him, I mean, he would have been frustrated if it was lap 30 or so, but I feel it would have been better. The fact that he was just about to start the last lap and there was no danger from any cars on the track of overtaking him. He'd driven an absolute brilliant race. He'd managed the car perfectly, getting it round. And then he's panicking, you start hearing his panic on the radio, then you just that scream of, it's broken, you're like, Lando. But the thing is, with normal Sky coverage, it was covering the front, I mean fair enough covering the front with Charles Leclerc's first ever race win, but suddenly you saw on the leaderboard coming down the side and you're like going, Perez above Norris, Albon, and then it was just like that, and you're like going, and I was sitting next to my brother and I was like going, what's happening to, he was like, I don't know, what's happening to Norris, like what's happened, what is it glitched or something like that? And then you see
the fact that just as Charles Leclerc
goes round
the final through the bus stop chicane, final corner, and then you just see Lando Norris parked up on the start finish straight, and it's
horrible.
I feel for him. It was a performance worthy of the finish that he should have had.
And I also feel really sorry because we thought he needed a good second half of the season to secure his seat. And I thought Giovinazzi actually drove a very good race. And then just going out, I think it looked like he just took a bit too much curb on his exit.
Rear tyre.
And you just
that little bit too much, and then once that back end steps out, especially the pace that you're going through there, once that back end steps out, there's very little that you can do to rectify that. So it comes back to not being able to stick to the limits of a car, which it's unfortunate. That one I'm going to say is more unfortunate though.
I think that was a very, very unlucky. That was margins, and I'm pretty sure drivers would have done it all day, and for whatever reason his Alpha just kind of gave way to him, probably a little bit early on the throttle, or gave too much throttle whilst on the curb. And yeah, heartbreak for him as well, but he's got a big Grand Prix ahead of him, his home Grand Prix next weekend, and that Alpha has shown natural pace, so it'll be interesting to see how both him and Kimi do next weekend, because this should have been a strong points finish for Alpha this week, and they've gone home with nothing. But that probably rounds up race there. I've seen we probably talk about our rookies.
Yes.
In order. Do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
I can go first.
Alright, you go first then. You know what, take it. Take on the you go first, Ash.
Alright, number 1, despite not finishing the race, I'm going to put Lando Norris up there. It was a near perfect drive for him, and definitely took on the mantle that Carlos Sainz had left.
I think one of your criticisms of him, it was not necessarily criticism, like constructive feedback, was his Sunday performances needing to match his Saturday, and this was one.
Exactly, and that would be one of the reasons why you need to be putting him up there. It's one of the first Sundays where it looks as if he's been able to control the car and maintain the performance for the whole race, and that's what is needed. So he's had a brilliant season, but this was the race that you looked at and thought, he's on it now, and I hope that it kick-starts his second half of the season, and his Sunday performances will start to match his Saturdays more consistently. Second has to be Alexander Albon. It's up there with his drive in China, from pit lane to points there. Started at the back. Yes, he's got the benefit of being in the Red Bull now, but it's still being able to show that racecraft, which he did in a lot of his overtakes. So I was really impressed with his performance. Third, Giovinazzi. Just needed that finish once again. It would have been, well, at the time, he would have ended up scoring more points in this race than he had in the first 12 races of the season. So, yeah, definitely deserves to be up there. And George Russell, he's fourth on the basis that because the circuit we were at, that Williams just wasn't really on it in terms of pace in general. So finished ahead of Kubica again, finished the race again, which shows the reliability. There just wasn't a lot for him that he could have done in the race. I'll be honest, I did like seeing the grid at the start with him in 14th, which, yes, was down to engine penalties, but it was nice to see him there.
Yeah. This is a strange one. We're going to agree. I thought Lando Norris drove absolutely superb race, and it was cruelly taken away from him, but I won't knock him there. He was voted driver of the day. Probably should have been Charles, but at least it's some small consolation for Lando. A superb drive, but yeah,
I'll be honest, he probably wants the points more than driver of the day.
It certainly would do. If you said, could I trade that for points, he certainly would. Second, Alexander Albon, superb debut in the Red Bull car. Excited to see what more is to come, but Daniel Kvyat, like we said, still pushing him for that Red Bull seat in 2020, and we're realistic, it's probably a head-to-head between those two, because Red Bull would love to keep it internal rather than looking at a Nico Hülkenberg / rarity Alonso, if that would ever come onto a grid. 3 is Giovinazzi. I thought it was one of his best performances in the Alfa Romeo car to date. Had the natural pace, was taking advantage of that, was getting a points finish, and again last lap, but it only takes one mistake in those 44 laps round Spa, and you can be in the wall, and that's game over. It's a cruel world, Formula 1 racing, and yeah, it punishes mistakes like that. And Spa is certainly a circuit that punishes mistakes like that. And then fourth, George Russell is fourth, not on his driving ability, but just on the fact that Williams were so woeful this weekend in terms of so far behind anything. I don't think they even got a mention in the race, other than maybe if they were rounding up the full grid ending.
Yeah,
I can't
remember too much of their race, other than the fact that both of them dropped like stones.
So because of how the other performed, like performing well individually, within that they naturally just come above George Russell, which is unfair on him. Has to do something probably now exceptional to be graded higher than them within it, or one of the others has to be truly terrible to be below him. But do we feel anything more from the race to cover?
No, I think it was once again a good advert for Formula 1.
I think it was a solid, very good race. Obviously not the excitement of the four before, but I still thought it was a very strong race, and it certainly was an enjoyable race to watch, bar obviously the sombre
and the sombre mood was understandable, considering, because motorsport as a whole is a very tight-knit family, and the drivers of all the different categories are close. So
it was amazing to see the support there on the grid with the people who knew him, but also the support just around the motorsport community world. I think they had the minute's silence, obviously in the IndyCar at Portland as well, and obviously Twitter, where you follow us. There was floods of message of support from there as well, which is amazing.
The two things that I would want to put out there is, one, the standing ovation that the medical staff got. It's a difficult environment to be working in, but their reactions unfortunately weren't able to save Hubert. However, there are a lot of reports saying that the injuries sustained by Correa would have been a lot worse had the reaction time not been as quick as it was. So the standing ovation that they got was fantastic, and also I think based on how motorsport is, the standing ovation on lap 19 for Anthoine Hubert was a real powerful message that shows the support that all of the fans in F1 have for the drivers, and the understanding that yes, they're going out there to race for our entertainment, but the risks that they are taking are so huge that there aren't many sports where you go into it every day and there is a chance that
there's a high risk to your own life.
So it was quite poignant having the standing ovation on lap 19, and it was really nice to see the support that the fans were giving to Anthoine Hubert's family and friends in that situation.
And so obviously we started off the video in remembrance of Anthoine, and obviously we end this video, we dedicate this video to his memory. Thoughts again to his family and friends, but we keep racing in his memory going forward. It's what he would want. He was a driver at heart, and it's just such a sad time, but we will always remember Anthoine Hubert.